Okay, in this video, reaction video, she gave her, she gave her 9-year-old daughter, she gave her 9-year-old daughter to a predator. So that's what happened in the video. Her mother gave her 9-year-old child to a predator, to a child predator. That is right now. It says she handed her 9-year-old daughter to a predator. Then everything went. Then everything went silent.
On the afternoon of Friday, May 16, 2014, a quiet residential community in Temple Terrace, Florida, became a setting for an act of pure evil. A 9-year-old girl climbed into a car. She was smiling, innocent, and completely relaxed. She expected a fun weekend afternoon with a trusted family friend. She was just a child. She had no idea that the car doors closing around her were the boundaries of a death trap. Felicia Williams never saw her mother again. Less than 60 hours later, on the afternoon of Sunday, May 18, 2014, the humid air off the Courtney Campbell Causeway in Clearwater, Florida, carried a distinct scent. In the shallow waterway, floating naked among the mangroves, lay the bruised body of a 9-year-old child. Her skull was fractured from a heavy blow. Her small frame bore the clear marks of violent sexual abuse. Deep bruises formed a ring around her neck, where human hands had squeezed the life out of her. The weight of this true crime story lies in the profound betrayal that made it possible. A mother trusted a close friend. That friend trusted a stranger. And that stranger turned a regular afternoon into a living nightmare. He carried a child's body out of an apartment building inside a commercial suitcase. He drove 17 miles across the city just to cast her into the ocean. Today, we are visiting the heartbreaking case of Felicia Williams. This is a journey through a dark web of manufactured stories, digital forensic trails, a compromised witness, and the final judicial verdict that sent a predator to Florida's death row. If you believe in looking closely at the raw facts of these cases and standing up for the memory of children who were failed by the people around them, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Tell us where you are watching from and stay with us. We must ensure that Felicia's name is never forgotten. The neighborhood of Temple Terrace seemed peaceful on the surface. It was a place where children played on manicured lawns under the warm Florida sun. But on May 16, 2014, that sense of safety dissolved into absolute terror. To see how this tragedy unfolded, we have to look back to the very beginning of her life. Felicia Nicole Williams was born on December 9, 2004. From the moment she arrived, she was the light of her family's world. Her mother and her stepfather, Calvin Holder, cherished her. As she grew, she became a bright, joyful child. Her family affectionately called her Sugar Plum because of her sweet, loving nature. She brought pure energy into her household, but her world was about to cross paths with a dangerous dynamic. It all started because of a decision made by a 23-year-old woman named Ebony Wiley. Wiley was close with Felicia's mother. She was someone the family considered a protector. On that Friday afternoon, Ebony Wiley pulled up to the Williams
mother
family
took her free with her
sitting
child.
in the vehicle with her was her
They
boyfriend,
gave her child to
a
her.
35-year-old man named Randall Richie. Richie was an
Her mother gave her
in
free.
Jamaica. He carried a
Her
dark,
child
hidden
was watching her
criminal
child.
past
She
that the
gave her
family knew
child, her
nothing
free
about.
gave her child
They only saw
to
Ebony.
a child
They
predator.
trusted her completely. They handed over their beautiful 9-year-old girl for a normal afternoon outing, and they watched the car pull away from the curb.
Why can't you keep
The
their
group
group?
stopped briefly at a fast food restaurant to buy Felicia some food. It was a regular routine meant to keep the child comfortable. From there, they drove 10 miles northeast to the Doral Oaks apartments on Tanglewood Lane in Temple Terrace, where Richie stayed with his mother. They walked up the stairs, entered the apartment, and closed the door. Within minutes of their arrival, a dark reality began to take shape. Around 4:50 p.m., Ebony Wiley decided she wanted to leave the apartment to buy marijuana. Initially, she planned to take Felicia with her in the car, but Granville Ritchie stepped forward. He spoke smoothly. He convinced Wiley that there was no reason to drag the little girl along on a drug buy. He told her to leave Felicia behind in the room. He promised he would look after her. Ebony Wiley agreed. She turned around, left the residence, and walked out to her vehicle. She left a vulnerable 9-year-old child completely alone with a predator. The clock read exactly 4:50 p.m. A countdown began. The timeline of her survival was now down to just 70 minutes. During this brief hour, Richie turned on the child. The raw, cold facts from the medical examiner later laid bare the complete brutality of what happened in those quiet rooms. Richie pinned the little girl down. He stripped her of her clothes. He subjected her small body to severe, horrific sexual battery. Felicia did not give up. She fought back with everything she had. The forensic pathologist noted that she sustained deep, extensive, blunt force trauma to her head. There were internal and external injuries across her body from the sheer force of the assault. When her screams threatened to expose what he was doing, Richie stopped her voice. He placed his large hands around her neck. He applied a steady, crushing pressure. He squeezed so hard that he fractured the delicate internal bones and cartilaginous structures deep inside her throat. He held her down against the floor until the struggling stopped. He held her until her breathing ended completely. The clock ticked forward. It was now 6 p.m. Ebony Wiley pulled back into the parking lot of the Doral Oaks apartments. She walked up the concrete steps and knocked on the door. When the door opened, the air inside felt heavy and altered. Granville Ritchie stood there. He was completely shirtless. His skin was slick with sweat. He was breathing heavily, pacing back and forth, his eyes wide and panicked. Wiley looked past his naked shoulders. The living room was empty. Felicia was nowhere to be seen. Wiley demanded to know where the little girl was. Ritchie did not hesitate. He had already manufactured a smooth lie. He claimed that while Wiley was away, he had given Felicia some cash because she wanted to walk down to the nearby CVS store to buy some candy. He looked her in the eye and claimed the 9-year-old had simply never returned. Instead of screaming for help, instead of immediately dialing 911, Ebony Wiley let panic dictate her choices. She knew she had left a child alone to participate in an illegal drug deal. Ritchie used that fear against her. He convinced her that they needed to handle this quietly. He told her they should search the neighborhood themselves before involving the police. The two spent the next several hours walking around the complex. They walked through the darkening streets of Temple Terrace, pretending to look for a missing child. They called out her name into the humid night. But it was all a calculated performance. Felicia was already lying lifeless inside that apartment. The sun sank below the horizon, casting pitch-black shadows over the town. Around 10:30 p.m., Granville Ritchie told Wiley it was time to leave. He loaded her into his dark Lexus sedan. He drove her 10 miles back to her home in Tampa. He dropped her off on a quiet street corner, leaving her alone with her mounting terror. Then Ritchie turned his car around. He drove directly back to the Tanglewood Lane apartment. The cover-up was moving into a secondary, terrifying phase. Ritchie walked back into the silent residence. He went to a closet and pulled out a large, dark blue Protégé brand commercial suitcase. He walked over to the small, lifeless form of Felicia Williams. He folded her naked body into the tight, suffocating confines of the luggage. He pulled the zipper shut. He dragged the heavy suitcase across the carpeted floor. He pulled it out onto the rear patio and down the concrete steps toward his car. The weight of the luggage was so heavy that one of the plastic wheels snapped completely off. It left a clean, fractured piece of dark plastic resting in the dirt near the patio. Richie ignored it. He shoved the heavy suitcase into the trunk of his Lexus, slammed it shut, and started the engine. It was now the pitch-black morning hours of Saturday, May 17th, 2014. As the entire city slept, a killer was driving through the dark. He was heading toward the coast with a child hidden in his trunk. But as his tires hummed against the asphalt, Richie had no idea that his own cell phone was silently recording his exact location, and a modern digital trail was about to expose every single turn he made in the dark. As dawn broke over Florida on Saturday, May 17, 2014, the Williams family woke up into a living nightmare. Felicia had not returned home. Ebony Wiley was giving strange, empty answers about where the little girl was. Her phone calls were frantic. Her excuses made no sense. Felicia's mother felt a cold panic setting in. She knew her daughter would never stay away this long. Terrified, she called the Temple Terrace Police Department. She reported her 9-year-old daughter missing. When detectives arrived to interview Ebony Wiley, her story fell apart within minutes. She was trembling. Her eyes darted around the room. She gave the officers a completely manufactured lie. She claimed she had taken Felicia to the apartment, and while she was in the bathroom taking a shower, Felicia had simply walked out and vanished. Detectives pressed hard on the timeline. They asked who else was inside that apartment. Wiley lied again. She was desperate to keep Granville Ritchie's name completely out of the police notes. But her story was full of holes. She could not explain the massive time gaps. She could not explain why she waited over 12 hours to call for help. By Saturday afternoon, the police had enough of the lies. They arrested Ebony Wiley. They charged her with providing false information to law enforcement during a capital missing person investigation. They locked her in a county jail cell. The community was left wondering what dark secret she was trying to protect. While Wiley sat behind bars, a massive search grid rolled out across Temple Terrace. Volunteers, K-9 units, and police helicopters scoured the woods. They searched the muddy retention ponds. They checked the dark alleys near Tanglewood Lane. They were looking for a missing child in a bright shirt and shorts. They had no idea they were looking in the wrong county. The true breakthrough came on the afternoon of Sunday, May 18, 2014, at exactly 3:20 p.m. A group of boaters was moving through the water just off the Courtney Campbell Causeway in Clearwater, Florida. The causeway is a long, isolated stretch of highway. It is surrounded by deep water on both sides. It sits roughly 17 miles away from the apartment complex where Felicia was last seen alive. As the boat drifted near a thick line of mangroves, a passenger saw something pale floating in the shallow current. They steered the boat closer. The salt water washed over the form of a young human being. It was a child. She was completely naked, floating face down in the water. The boaters immediately dialed 911. Her family's hope ended right there in the water. Emergency teams and forensic investigators rushed to the causeway. They pulled the small body from the bay. The skin was covered in deep cuts and abrasions. An initial exam revealed heavy trauma to her skull. Deep, dark ligature marks were cut into the skin of her neck. The body was taken directly to the Pinellas County Medical Examiner's office. By Sunday evening, fingerprint matches confirmed the absolute worst. It was Felicia Nicole Williams. When the news reached the Williams home, the neighborhood filled with the sound of screaming and weeping. Her stepfather, Calvin Holder, stood on the porch in absolute shock. He looked at the neighbors and asked a question that would haunt the entire state. Why would anyone want to hurt her? She was just a child. The missing person case was now officially a capital homicide investigation. The state brought in elite forensic teams to sweep the apartment. They brought in digital specialists to pull cell phone data from every tower in the area. They were looking for a monster, and the digital footprint left behind in the dark was about to point directly to a car driving across the bridge in the middle of the night. With the body recovered, Detectives immediately brought Ebony Wiley back into the quiet interrogation room. She had just bonded out of jail on Sunday morning for her initial arrest. Faced with the shocking reality that Felicia's body had been pulled from the bay, her manufactured lie about the child vanishing while she was in the shower completely collapsed under the weight of the new evidence. Detectives pressed her hard on the massive time gaps and the true nature of her relationship with Granville Ashanti Ritchie. Under the heavy pressure of the interrogation, Wiley broke down. She admitted to the officers that she had lied to protect her boyfriend because she was terrified of getting into legal trouble over their drug activities. She finally changed her story and gave investigators the missing piece of the puzzle. She confessed that on the afternoon of Friday, May 16, 2014, she had left the Doral Oaks apartment on Tanglewood Lane to buy marijuana, leaving Felicia completely alone in the care of Granville Ritchie. She told detectives that when she returned at 6 p.m., Ritchie was shirtless, dripping with sweat, and pacing the floor like a trapped animal. She detailed how he told her Felicia had gone to a nearby drugstore for candy, and how the two of them had concocted the shower alibi to mislead the police. In her disturbing confession to investigators, she even admitted that she took drugs and had sex with Ritchie later that same night, while the child was missing. This critical admission shifted the entire multi-agency task force squarely onto Granville Ashanti Ritchie. Detectives tracked him down to a residence in St. Petersburg, Florida, where he was staying with another girlfriend, acting as if it were a regular weekend. When investigators brought him into the interrogation room, Ritchie maintained a completely calm, indifferent demeanor. He looked the detectives in the eye and swore under oath that he had never driven anywhere near the Courtney Campbell Causeway that weekend. He believed the water had washed away his sins. But he forgot about the silent tracker inside his pocket. State electronic forensic experts obtained a legal warrant for Ritchie's mobile phone records, pulling the historical cell site location data that would place him at the dump site in the dead of night. The data did not lie. It provided a cold, unalterable, minute-by-minute map of his actual movements through the dark. At 11 p.m. on Friday night, Ritchie's phone pinged a tower directly adjacent to the Tanglewood Lane apartment complex. This proved he was still at the scene of the murder long after he claimed he had left. Then, at 1 a.m. on Saturday morning, the cell signal began to move. The digital footprint showed him traveling west, moving out of Temple Terrace and cutting straight across the highways of Hillsborough County. Between 1:45 a.m. and 2:30 a.m., his phone connected to a single cellular tower located directly on the isolated Courtney Campbell Causeway. The ping showed his phone remained completely stationary for 45 intense minutes. He was standing at the exact stretch of mangrove-lined shoreline where the boaters would later find Felicia floating face down. Finally, at 3 a.m., the signal moved south, tracking his arrival at the house in St. Petersburg. The digital trail placed him directly at the dump site in the dead of night. Armed with this data, forensic teams executed a search warrant on Ritchie's property and his dark Lexus sedan. They were looking for trace evidence. What they found inside the car was devastating. Crime scene technicians lifted the heavy hood of the vehicle. They examined the front undercarriage and the plastic housing around the headlights. Wedged deep inside the plastic gaps of the front headlight assembly were fragments of unique, rare shoreline plant material. The state brought in an environmental botanist to analyze the green fragments. The expert confirmed that the vegetation did not belong to any inland plants found in Temple Terrace or the city of Tampa. They were specific, salt-tolerant shoreline leaves that grew exclusively along the water edges of the Courtney Campbell Causeway. Next, investigators scraped the carpet of the driver's side floorboard. They recovered soil and sand samples. The mineral composition perfectly matched the dirt paths leading down to the water at the exact spot where the body was cast away. The search then shifted right back to the apartment on Tanglewood Lane. Technicians used high-intensity forensic lights across the rear patio and the carpeted living room. They found clear indentations on the floorboards. The marks showed where a heavy, wheeled object had been dragged under significant weight, And there, resting in the soil just off the edge of the patio, they found a small piece of dark plastic. It was a broken structural wheel support from a protege brand commercial suitcase. Inside the home, they recovered a matching broken zipper pull that had been violently torn away from the fabric. The state now had the complete timeline. They had the digital tower pings placing the suspect at the ocean. They had the physical earth from the shoreline embedded deep inside his car. In August 2014, the grand jury issued a formal indictment. Granville Ashanti Ritchie was officially arrested and locked away. He was charged with first-degree capital murder, capital sexual battery, and aggravated child abuse. The state made it very clear they would be seeking the death penalty. But as Ritchie sat in his concrete cell waiting for trial, the public domain was about to learn about an even more disturbing piece of evidence. A seconds-long audio recording that would completely shatter any lingering doubts about what happened during those 70 minutes of absolute silence. It took 5 long, agonizing years for the state of Florida to bring Granville Ashanti Ritchie to trial. Legal delays, defense motions, and psychological evaluations dragged the process out. For 2,310 days, Felicia's mother sat in the courtroom gallery. She sat there completely broken, waiting for the legal system to address the loss of her little girl. The trial finally opened in September 2019. The venue was the Hillsborough County Circuit Court, presided over by Judge Michelle Cisco. The courtroom air was thick and suffocating. The benches were packed with media, community members, and a grieving family dressed in deep black. The prosecution built their entire case around a single, devastating reality: ultimate betrayal. They laid out the physical trail of evidence for the jury. They displayed the broken suitcase wheels. They showed the shoreline soil. They mapped out the midnight cell tower pings. But the true emotional peak of the trial arrived when the state called its star witness to the stand. Ebony Wiley walked up to the witness box. Wiley had reached a formal plea agreement with the state. In exchange for her testimony, she faced charges for her initial interference and the false statements she gave to the police. But now she was legally required to tell the raw, unvarnished truth about what happened inside that apartment. As she took the stand, she was visibly trembling. Her voice shook with a heavy, unstable emotion. She completely refused to look across the room at Granville Ritchie. Ritchie sat at the defense table, his face entirely blank and indifferent. Under direct examination, Wiley took the jury back to the afternoon of Friday, May 16, 2014. She admitted that she was the one who drove Felicia away from her safe family home. She wept openly as she recalled the exact moment Ritchie looked her in the eye on the apartment sofa. She described how he smoothly convinced her to leave the 9-year-old child behind while she went down the street to buy drugs. "I trusted him," she whispered into the silent courtroom. "I never thought he would hurt her." She described her return to the apartment at 6 p.m. She told the jury how she found Ritchie completely shirtless, dripping with sweat, and pacing the floor like a trapped animal. She detailed the lie he told about the CVS candy run. She admitted that her own terror of getting into legal trouble stopped her from picking up the phone and calling 911 immediately. She let the clock run out while Felicia lay lifeless just feet away. The defense attorneys launched a brutal cross-examination. They hammered Wiley on her extensive history of deception. They pointed out that she had given 3 completely different versions of events to investigators during the first 48 hours of the missing person case. They argued to the jury that Wiley was simply changing her story to escape a massive prison sentence. They claimed she was pinning her own negligence on Ritchie to save herself. But the prosecution stood firm. They showed that Wiley's final, weeping testimony aligned perfectly with the objective, cold digital facts. Her timeline of when she left and returned matched the exact data logs of the wireless towers. Her description of Ritchie's frantic, sweating state fit the timeline of a killer trying to hide a body before the sun came up. The state then called the medical examiner to the stand. The room went completely cold, as graphic, technical details from the autopsy filled the air. The raw medical facts were unalterable. Felicia had been subjected to severe physical trauma before her airway was crushed. She did not pass away quickly. She died a slow, painful death in that room while the person who was supposed to protect her was driving around looking for drugs. On September 25th, 2019, after a grueling 2-week trial, the case was officially handed over to the jury. The 12 citizens walked into the deliberation room. It took them just 4 hours to reach a decision. They walked back into the courtroom, looked at the defendant, and delivered a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts of first-degree capital murder, capital sexual battery, and aggravated child abuse. The conviction was secured, but the absolute climax of this legal battle was still to come. The jury was about to re-enter that room to decide if Granville Ritchie would pay for the life of Sugar Plum with his very own execution. On Friday, September 27, 2019, the 12 members of the jury walked back into the Hillsborough County courtroom. Their task was heavy. In the state of Florida, a death sentence requires an absolute, unanimous vote from every single juror. If even one person hesitated, the killer would escape the ultimate penalty. The defense attorneys pleaded for mercy. They spoke about Ritchie's childhood in Kingston, Jamaica. They argued that spending the rest of his natural life inside a maximum security cage was punishment enough. But the prosecution stood before the jury box and asked them to look closely at the sheer depravity of the crime scene. They laid out the facts one last time. They spoke of the age of the victim, the violent sexual battery, and the cold, calculated manner in which he packed a 9-year-old child into a dark suitcase and threw her into the saltwater bay. The prosecutor argued that these brutal details demanded the ultimate sentence available under the law. The jury locked themselves away. They deliberated in secret. When the door finally opened and they filed back into the room, their decision was absolute. The vote was 12-0, a unanimous recommendation for the death penalty. Due to a series of legal delays and structural court shutdowns throughout 2020, the formal final sentencing phase was pushed back to the morning of Friday, September 11th, 2020. On that day, Circuit Judge Michelle Cisco ordered Granville Ashanti Ritchie to stand up and face the bench. But before the judge pronounced the sentence, Felicia Demerson, the grieving mother of Sugar Plum, stepped up to the wooden podium. She was dressed completely in black. Her voice shook with a profound, breaking sorrow. She turned her body and looked directly into the face of Granville Ritchie. Ritchie remained entirely motionless, his hands resting at his sides.
I've waited 2,310 days for this day to come. I cannot ask for his fate. And that would be for him to be hung, for him to feel what my daughter felt.
Judge Michelle Cisco then turned her focus to the defendant. She made it clear that in all her decades on the legal bench, she had rarely witnessed an act of such calculated, pure cruelty against an innocent child. She stated that the raw evidence proved Felicia had suffered a horrendous, physically painful, and psychologically torturous death. The judge's final words cut through the heavy silence of the room.
My heart breaks for you as a mother. Absolutely breaks for you as a mother.
There will be no corporeal redemption for you, your physical being, your person. You will remain incarcerated until the date of your death is scheduled to occur. Pursuant to the laws of the state of Florida, you are hereby sentenced to death. Ritchie was led out of the courtroom doors in heavy iron chains. He was transported directly to the death row housing unit at the Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. His legal defense team filed an immediate appeal. They claimed there was prosecutorial misconduct during the trial and challenged the circumstantial nature of the digital cellular data. However, in June 2022, The Florida Supreme Court reviewed every single page of the trial records. They officially issued an opinion rejecting his claims, upholding both the capital conviction and the death sentence. He remains on death row to this day. The heartbreaking murder of Felicia Williams stands as a dark, permanent warning. It shows how quickly innocence can be destroyed when the sacred boundaries of trust are shattered by a predator. A 9-year-old girl's entire future was stolen because the adults who were supposed to look out for her failed to keep her safe, leaving a family to carry an unbearable, lifelong grief. What do you think about the legal choices made by Ebony Wiley on that hot Friday afternoon? Should our justice system place a heavier criminal penalty on individuals who leave vulnerable children alone in the care of practical strangers?
Yep.
Let's talk about the digital tracking evidence and the ethics of child safety in the comments section below. If you want to continue looking deeply into these criminal investigations, with a strict focus on historical facts and narrative truth, please take a second to like this video, share it with others in the true crime community, and subscribe to stand with us. May Felicia Sugarplum Williams finally rest in eternal, beautiful peace.
This one is okay. This story is broken stud found got a broken stud found God and then lost her girl to her ex-boyfriend who then took her life. R.I.P. Tamia Logan. So a broken stud found God and then lost her girl to her ex-boyfriend who then took her life, took her girlfriend's life. So it's a RP to Mia Logan. Let me react to her story. Okay, in this story, a broken stud found God and then lost her girlfriend to her girlfriend ex-boyfriend who took her girlfriend's life. RP to Mia Logan. So this is the reaction right here.
Purified. Brothers, we want to be clean. When she came here, she was in some trouble too, but God dismissed the case. Come on here, church. I know what the Lord will do. Y'all better go and dance for your turnaround.
29-year-old Tonya Logan, affectionately known as Lil Mia, was finally doing what most people only post about. She wasn't just praying for change, she was making it. She was claiming joy, chasing her dreams, walking with God, and pulling others into the light with her. While some women live for wigs, lashes, and gossip, Mia lived for scripture, peace, and purpose. Church wasn't a side hobby, it was her sanctuary. Over the past few years, she made real changes, cutting off the chaos, focusing on her goals, and pouring into herself. But the hardest demons to cast out aren't strangers. They're the ones you once called mine.
Y'all, when a bitch wanna leave you for a nigga, throw that stuff away. Not me. So now, I'm in the bathroom collecting her toothbrush. All you can ever brush your teeth again. I'm collecting her fucking edge control, bitch. Fuck your edges. And this. You gotta get the spirit stuff out your house. So fat, man, I'm about to throw my shit out. Go back to a nigga. About to throw the shit out. Get the spirit stuff out your house. When they leave, throw the shit away.
Letting go of drama is easy with his coworkers or fake friends. But when the mess is someone you love, someone you once saw forever with, that's heartbreak on a different level. And Mia tried. She really tried. She thought she was done with her. She thought it was over. But according to friends, the woman Mia loved, who she had finally left behind, had crawled back to her past, back to a man fresh out of prison, a man who couldn't stomach the fact that she had dated a woman. He was angry, he was insecure, and on July 18th, when he drove by Tunya's house, he made sure Mia knew it was over for good. Welcome to the American Crime Femicide channel. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future uploads.
What's up, TikTok? This is my prayer closet. I love it. Snapchat said, Mia, you need to make a TikTok to show people the inspiration you have. You're so motivational. You just blow people's minds. So I had to make one. This is my prayer closet. I love it. I put notes on board. Whoever this message is for, push through the pain. Do not give up. Keep winning. The devil think he got us young people, but he don't. Us young people getting close to God, and I love it. We might have other sins in the way, but we push through it and still love God. I got a lot going on. I have sins I have to take care of, but I still love God and I still push through. I don't know who this message is for. Keep pushing, keep striving, keep being great. You're going to win. It doesn't matter what the devil says. You're a winner. You're a winner. You're a winner. I love it.
Unlike most people, Tamia didn't live in the shadows. She lived her life out loud, raw, public, and transparent, the way only the brave or the broken can. On social media, she didn't just post for aesthetics or followers. She posted for God, for growth, for the girls who looked like her and needed to see that healing was possible. That you could fall, be made, go to jail, fight demons, and still find your way back to Christ. Because a few years ago, Logan wasn't the calm, spiritual woman she had become by 2025.
Everyone keep asking me, how is this prayer about coming back? January 8, 2023, I went to jail. It was rough. I don't know. I remember the guard said, lights off. Cut off. Dark. But I went to bed. I went to bed. I went to sleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up. My heart started beating fast. I said, God, please, not here, not in anxiety, here, please. I don't want to look weak in front of all these demons in my cell. I said, God, please, please, please. I'm always running to my rescue with my mom. If I need help, I'm going to my mom. But this particular day, I couldn't run to my mom. My mom couldn't be my rescue. God was my rescue. I had to talk to him to relax, to tell him, God, when if you get me out of here, I'm going to get back to church. I'm not going to miss it on Sunday. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. My heart started to ease up. Started to ease up. I said, God, thank you. When I got to jail January 10th, 2023, I came home and had a prayer call. Because when I went in January 8th, I didn't have no bond. When I went to court, the judge granted me a bond. And when I got that bond, I went, came home to the cell, got in my room, did a prayer call. And my connection with God has got stronger than ever. Without knowing God, and I don't know who this message is for. It doesn't matter about the past in your life. If you're coming, if you're receiving, keep going.
She grew up in a loving, two-parent home, the kind people beg God for. When she came out as a lesbian, her parents didn't flinch. They may have had their questions, may have had their hesitations, but they didn't withhold their love. Their concern wasn't about her being gay. It was about the company she kept, the kind of trouble she kept chasing in the form of lovers who pulled her down, not up. Tamia was honest about it. She told the internet that she had been fighting in the streets, carrying weapons, getting caught up in chaos, all tied to the same pattern, falling for women who didn't love her the way she deserved. She said to herself, one thing you can never put beside my name is loaded scary. I just got shot 2 weeks ago, and that gun didn't scare me. So why would I be scared of a damn night? I'm outside all weekend drunk, waiting on an MF to swing on me. That's on everything I love. Translation. She wasn't scared of pain, but something shifted. After a serious encounter with the law, she resetted her life. She came back to church, not just in passing. She made a prayer closet. She began to study the word like her life depended on it, because it did. She gave up the chaos for cars, apartments, and clarity. She didn't just boast about God. She ran with him.
It ain't for your glory, but it's for His. And it ain't for what people think, it's for Him. It's for Him. But let me tell you what the Lord's going to do. I know you're happy about the job you got, but there's another job with another zero here added on to it. So the Lord said, keep on doing what you're doing there, but He's really setting you up for something totally brand new. It's going to be so brand new, you're going to make so much money, and you're going to know it's God because your education don't meet the requirement. It's just going to be God's favor. God's going to show you that He loves you. Uh-oh! Once you run it, don't let it run by stuff. Run it, get it, and come back with it.
By July 2025, Tamika had hit a reset, a new apartment, a new mindset, a new season. In one of her last TikToks, she explained how she had finally gotten a new place, her own space, her own peace. She said her mother had told her to come get her things.
So everybody know I got my own crib. I've been here for about 4 months. And my mom keep telling me to get the rest of my clothes from her house. I'm about to show y'all what she did, y'all. If you're a tourist, you don't like your clothes to be messed with. I'm about to show y'all what she did. I got my own crib now. She didn't tell me to come get my clothes, y'all. What I do? This is the lady. I'm about to show y'all what she did to my clothes. Oh my God. So, I made it to my parents' house and I'm about to show y'all what my mother did with my clothes. If you're a tourist, you don't like your clothes crammed up in bags and shit. Gotta change my attitude one year. She's gonna smack me the next week if I be mad. And I really want my paycheck this week. I can't wait to next shit. So I'm about to just keep it cool. Like, are you ready to see what she did? Like, I'm just so upset right now. Like, oh my God, you didn't grab my clothes in bags. Like, this is an old school mama. She don't play, honey. What? Like, why do you have my good clothes in bags? Like, oh my goodness, I had to step outside because my mom, it really wanted to do is have a tantrum.
She was funny too. You know, pretty good. She changed, she lost her life due to her girlfriend ex-boyfriend because he was pregnant. Her girlfriend, like, when that's crazy.
She was done with this loyal girlfriend.
She was done with the relationship. All these two take her life. They didn't get together.
Chaos. She never signed up for.
That's crazy.
I'm strong king.
And you take her life and her girl when you get no more.
Cheated on her, then fall back to her ex-boyfriend.
What's up, TikTok? Currently at work waiting something, but a lot of people been asking me, what made you run back to God? I was in a relationship with someone who definitely dirty. And it's not all on her, but I didn't have things that I was dealing with, but she stepped out on a relationship. She started going back to a baby daddy that left and came back with me and started fooling around with other people and came back with me. But this last thing done, she started sleeping with our next door neighbor.
Oh my God, what
She's
you doing?
currently pregnant now. And that took a toll on me. She left me for good. And I had to understand how to live life without it. But baby, I didn't when I left her alone. I turned my pain into God. I turned my pain into some money. I turned my pain into healing. I didn't want to run to God, but that's the only choice. I didn't have nobody else in my corner. I couldn't vent to a lot of people because when I vented to our next door neighbor, he looked past my sad story, and wanted the life that I cherish the most.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
crazy. Hey,
sometimes y'all gotta stop beating up folks. That won't
correct.
life you got.
Correct.
It ain't worth the dime, but they still want your dime. Okay?
Correct. But you said, yeah, you got, like, you got to do
That will make you run
I
out
was
of
saying,
also take
never take it like that to try to somebody else like,
I turn my pain to some money.
it just doesn't,
The
I
final
mean, it's
straw
sad,
came
you know,
when
to the
George
life.
Houston asked, who went by Unique on Facebook, cheated on her, then crawled back to her ex-boyfriend. A 37-year-old man named Marlo Johnson, who allegedly couldn't stomach the fact that the love of his life had left him for a woman. Tonya, furious and heartbroken, posted a video throwing out these things. She made it clear she was done. This wasn't some petty breakup. This was survival. The only problem, the devil doesn't take rejection well, and neither did Marlo. On July 18, 2025, Logan was found murdered in the front yard of her home in Shelby, North
My
Carolina.
God.
She just gotten off work. She had plans to celebrate her best friend's birthday. Her outfit was probably laid out. The bottle was probably chilling. And some coward, some spineless, insecure maid waited all day just to take her out like trash, as one of her friends posted in rage. Your funeral pass is revoked. Don't come. Don't even think about coming. It's on my heart to tell you, sit this one out, you need Williams. That love triangle you created caused this. Stay safe and please pray. God don't like ugly. Ask for forgiveness, because the world we live in may not forgive you. Another friend went further. I wasn't going to say anything, but Unique Williams, you are dead as wrong, and you know it. Turn that man in, because everybody knows you know where he's at. You've been trying to convince the world you were all for Tonya, posting about her, pretending you were hurting, while hiding the fact that your man did this because of you. This is wrong. The nerve, the audacity to post pictures of Tonya like you're innocent is crazy to me. That man probably said he was going to do this, and you sat there laughing about it. Logan's friends weren't having it. Streets done. Shooting studs over ran through pussy. We ain't forgot what you did in school either. Lock her up too. Streets may not have their way with her anyway. R.I.P. little yellow. You didn't deserve that. Fly high, angel. And another voice added, love will kill you. As crazy as it sounds, it's true. Her heart was so pure. She was taken away before her time. I felt bad for you at first, because I know how toxic women relationships can be. But forget that. Don't even put that Shastino name next to Tamia's anymore. What everyone knew but wouldn't say out loud, at least not until now, is this. Unique gave Tamia's address tomorrow. Logan had just moved. This was a new place. Only a handful of people knew the location. Her mama, her closest friends. And Unique. Police still haven't located Marlo, but they've already stated he'll be charged with first-degree murder when he's caught. As far as most folks are concerned, Unique should be right there next to him in handcuffs, because she played both sides. She let both of them believe they were the one while setting up the battlefield. And when Tamia refused to spin the block, when she refused to be the one chasing anymore, he let a man do what jealous men always do when they realize they lost control. He pulled the trigger. Figuratively or literally, Unique's hands are bloody too. Tamia's supporters flooded social media with screenshots of Logan's spiritual videos that now feel prophetic. In one video, Logan said, "Once the assignment is over, it's for your good." Maybe she knew. Maybe her spirit already sensed the trap.
What's up to the top? I think that today stuff to share. My caption is called "Once the Assignment is Over, It's for the Crazy." Some people they put all their dedication and hard work to the job, and the job just done. Start jumping into the depression and anxiety because when one door closes, another one is going open real quick. When someone leaves your home, stop crying, stop being depressed because that's love. Somebody's coming to you for your grave. Once the assignment is over, stop going to depression, stop beating yourself down because sometimes when you lose something, it's for your grave. I know it's push you, push you, stop letting them have
That's
the
how
line.
she goes
Because
about
you're
being
going to lose
emotional.
when you lose something, you want to
Her pastor, Bishop Marcus Strong, Destiny Life Center, mourned publicly. This is the Leonia Logan I knew. She genuinely loved God. She struggled like all of us do, but the respect she showed me and my wife was unmatched. She came to us about 4 years ago broken, and we helped her find her way. She loved the church. She was consistent. She was growing. My heart is heavy because we saw so much potential in her.
What you didn't get to see all the time was that she started to run in here. And when the spirit of God will get high, she take off running. I thought somebody would have ran by now. I really did. I thought somebody would have ran by now. Hey. It's victory. It's victory. That's what she do. When the spirit will get high, she take off running. Tell your neighbor to run and get it. And come back with it.
Come back with
And that's the part that stings, because Tamia was just getting started. She was once a lost, troubled soul, but she pulled herself out of hell and dared to believe she deserved more. And for a moment, she had it. Her own apartment, her own car, her own spiritual foundation. She was planning her future, dreaming of marriage, building a life, all while standing in her truth. But then came Margot, then came the betrayal, and then came the bullet. And now, we're left with another hashtag, another woman gone, another life snuffed out, not by random violence, but by someone who couldn't handle rejection, couldn't handle not being chosen, couldn't handle that her assignment no longer included them. So may she rest, may the truth come to light, and may every coward who had a hand in this, from the trigger man to the manipulator behind the scenes, rot in the misery they created. Tamia Logan deserved better, and we won't let you forget it.
She does very fine putting together this like she was up with a lot like that at all. Because you could just about this one day to win it. That win before it's crazy.
Police is gathering at Spring Valley Park attending